Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie. I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So whether you have a book in your head or maybe even 400 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. And yes, if you're wondering if it happens, I just had a delivery this morning of about 400 sheets of loose leaf. So at least once every couple of months, we do get one of those huge packets of paper. It does happen. I am so thrilled today to be joined by three authors who have unbelievably unleashed themselves. Lynne Bernfield is the author of When You Can, You Will. Why you can't always do what you want to do and what to do about it. And I love that attitude and can't wait to hear from Lynne. Michael Kelley is the author of The Lost Theory, a thrilling international quest to unlock the mysteries of the universe. And finally, we're joined by Dee Martin, the author of Listening with the Heart, Awaken the Secret to Authentic Parenting. But first, let's meet Lynne, the author of When You Can, You Will. And she writes, in today's society of instant gratification, success is supposed to be achieved by people who can immediately turn their lives around without a second thought. Therapist Lynne Bernfield advocates a slower approach to change and assures that change can be the most rewarding part of life when it comes at the right time. Please welcome Lynne. Lynne, I love that attitude you've got there about slow. I think you are so right that people think instant. So tell us a little bit about you and your background and your book.
I'm a psychotherapist. I've been in practice for more than 40 years. When You Can, You Will. The premise of When You Can, You Will is not only that change needs to be slow, it's that you need to know what it is, why it is you're changing. The emphasis in this culture is all on the outcome. It's all on what we want to achieve, doing what we want to do, or stopping what we want to stop. And what I know as a result of all my work is that when you can't make one of those changes, even though Nike says that you can, there's always a good reason if you're stuck. And until you know the reason, you keep focusing on the outcome, you're essentially spinning your wheels. Until you understand that there's a good reason, nobody wants to come into therapy. People come into therapy afraid, and quite often blaming themselves for whatever it is that they can't do, or they can't do fast enough, or they want to do, or they're stuck doing, or whatever it is, and they call themselves names. They say, I'm lazy, they say, I'm crazy, they say, I'm neurotic, or I'm self-destructive. Well, human beings are not self-destructive. We're wired to be self-protective. So whenever you can't do something that you want to do, there's a good reason. You may not yet know what it is, but the emphasis has to be on that. And so that's what the book says. The book says, oh, and by the way, they are the book and the workbook. And not only do you need to know the reason, but then you need to be able to do something about it.
I think that's fabulous. I'm so glad you mentioned there's a workbook also.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
And I just released actually the workbook and the audiobook and the Kindle version, all of which you can get on Amazon, obviously, and Equid, and at my website.
Fantastic. I love that. And you are so right in that what you're saying about people feeling like they're just spinning their wheels. If the time is not right, or if there are other obstacles, personal or worldly, we have to deal with those. If you're just, as you said, outcome based,
yes,
then you're not dealing with the stone that's right in front of you on the road.
That's exactly right. And not only that, but when you blame yourself, when you call yourself names, right? This is so epidemic in our culture. It's my fault. I'll call myself names, and you'll call me names. You'll tell me that I should be doing this, and why aren't I doing this? So what's wrong with me? But the end result of that is not motivation. It's the lowering of self-esteem. And when self-esteem is lower, everything is harder to do. So the sooner you are able to shift from, I need to do this, I have to do this, to why am I not able to do this? And what can I do about the obstacle? There's a chapter in the book called The Price and the Payoff. You get, there's always a give for the get, right? And if you don't know what the thing is that you're having to give, then you're gonna, well, you're not gonna be able to address whatever that is. I do this little exercise. This is the pain you're in because you can't do what you want to do. You can't lose that weight. You can't you can't leave that unpleasant relationship. You can't decide whether to have a baby, whatever it is. This is the pain you're going to be in when you do it. If you don't know that there's a price to pay for it, and you just keep focusing here, nobody turns in this amount of pain for that amount of pain. So it is until you understand what the price is and deal with it, you just get stuck here in this pain.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And you were talking about obstacles, and I see this with people with writing books, and especially you were saying spinning your wheels. I'll have people who want so desperately to write a book, but it takes them a long, long time, like I'm talking years. And honestly, it's because now that you're saying it, I realize they're not dealing with, they have other things going on in their life before they can get to that project. And it's frustrating for them.
Yeah, can I give you an example? I did have a woman come to me. She was a magazine writer. She wrote articles for a living. And she wanted to write a novel. She wanted to write a romance novel. And she was a very accomplished writer, and she knew that she could do it. And she was in it when she came to the sex scenes. And she couldn't make herself write the sex scenes. That's why she came to see me. And she did not have issues in her own life. But when we worked on it, what we discovered was that when she was 18, she ran away from home to live with her boyfriend. And her father, who was a pastor, had a heart attack. So now her father is elderly, and she's afraid if she writes what he thinks is a dirty book, it might, right. So she can't take that risk, right? So what she decided to do was to write the book. He was quite elderly and probably wasn't going to live that much longer. She decided she would write the book and wait to put it out for publication until it could no longer be damaging to her dad. Right. But that's the thing. This was what she wanted. This was the price she couldn't pay.
Right.
Until you know what the price is.
Yes.
Spinning your wheels.
Yeah. And she's just from an author standpoint, shall we say, just feeling stuck. But right. Someone like you was able to see it's not just stuck. It's not a book problem. That's right. It was not a book problem. And now that you're saying that, people will, I've seen the result of it, that someone will be stuck because I am not a professional like yourself. I don't know why, but at some point, maybe years later, they come and the whole thing flowed in just 2 months. And I know that somewhere, someone like yourself, or, something happened. And because, of course, I'm not necessarily privy to what happened to change things, but all I can see is that the time wasn't right. And now it was.
Or to quote me, when they could, they did.
When they could, they did. And what an empowering and freeing statement just on its own. I mean, certainly I love the idea of people, you said people don't want to go to therapy. On the flip side, I've heard that we should all be in therapy because it would really help all of us. But, just to be empowered to know that when you could, you will.
That's right. And maybe even more important, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
It's not that you're lazy or crazy or neurotic or anything. You have a good reason.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
I love that, because even on a bookend, people do say that. They say, oh, I must be lazy, or I'm stupid, or I can't do it. I, as again, untrained, say, nope, that's not the problem. But I don't know what the problem is. Someone like you could find it. And sometimes it takes a lot of uncovering, like this young person you were talking about with their pastor father.
I'd like to say for jumping in that I've forgotten your name, the woman who's writing about parenting.
Dee.
Yes.
Right. Quite often the issues go back to childhood, right? And so she will almost certainly have a lot to say about whatever it is that happens in childhood that gets you stuck later on, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. And this is very funny that it'll be the psychotherapist hour. I'm going to feel like the one, I'm glad Michael is here writing fiction because I'll be in good shape here. But you're absolutely right, Lynne. And these are things that we don't necessarily see.
No, and not only do we not necessarily see it, it's not in our consciousness. And I alluded to Nike a little while ago. I think that Nike represents the conventional wisdom. And by the way, when my agent was trying to get my book published, and some editors and publishers turned it down, they said it was a dangerous book. It was against the conventional wisdom. Because the conventional wisdom is you ought to be able to do whatever you think, whatever you could talk yourself into changing, just do it. But there are times when you just can't do it. And if you believe the conventional wisdom, then you beat yourself up. Oh, well, everybody says they can do it.
Right.
And it is really eliminating what I like to call civil war. You know how you're the enemy, right? It's always there.
Right.
Well, eliminating that is the first step to being able to seriously figure out what's going on here. Why can't I do it?
Right.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to take all the time, but another problem is while why is essential, why is not enough. Knowing better doesn't change behavior.
Okay.
If it did, you would never hear somebody saying, why did I do that? I know better. Right. So in the book, I spend time trying to help people believe and understand that there's nothing wrong with them, helping them figure out what the obstacle might be, what's the problem, what's the reason, and then techniques for dealing with the problem, whatever it is, so they can put that aside and do whatever it is they are stuck not doing. And I'm sure, again, that we're going to hear more about that. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Dee.
We're going to hear more about that.
Yes.
I love what you just said, Lynne, about that knowing why is not enough. Because I have heard that from people that'll say, I know what my problem is, or I know why, but that doesn't mean that you have the tools or the means. I might know how to install plumbing, but that doesn't mean that I can. And that doesn't mean that I have the tools or means to do so. And I think that that's kind of, in layman's terms, what you're saying is that knowing why you are stuck, shall we say, might be the first step, but it's not the whole journey.
That's right. And I think that's one of the reasons that therapy sometimes doesn't work, is because people get there, but then they don't get any further. Or they get there and then they think, well, that's it, I'm stuck, I can't do anything about that, right?
Right.
The knowing what it is essential because immediately it takes the pressure of there's something wrong with me off, which is really essential. But the rest of it is work. It's work, and unfortunately, not everybody can tolerate it. Not everybody can do the work. I'm sure Dee knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so people will get just so far in therapy and they'll say, well, it didn't work. I found out what it was and I can't do anything. I'm still doing the same old thing. It's unfortunate, but you have to stay the course. You have to be able to tolerate the distress or whatever it is that comes up. Because if there was a good reason, if it was a pleasant reason that you couldn't do this, you
Mhm.
wouldn't be stuck.
Well,
You
that's
know?
true. And, you were talking about society nowadays being very instantaneous, but it also, I think society has a tendency to think that everything is easy.
Yes, I agree. And so, as you point out, people are not always able to go the distance to do the hard work.
Right.
And I truly, I mean, I'm going to keep referring to Dee because in my experience, the harder it is for people to change as adults, you can look right back at their childhood
Mhm.
and see where the pain and despair is, and how hard it is for them to make the change, because it means they have to re-experience the early pain.
Mm.
Just to
Jump in, by all
support
means.
what you said, your childhood, by the time you're like 3 or 4, you have internalized the mannerisms, the ways of your caretakers, of your parents, of your educators. So you have absorbed that. And then you absorb the meaning that you gave all that. So it's an imprint. And so you're trying desperately in the world, according to what Lynne said. We're trying to be what our society expects of us, or even our parents, or achieve something. And we're doing it for many other reasons than even sometimes for our own selves. I have to prove to my parents, or I started doing that when I was 10. And until you unravel that, you're stuck with that automatic way of being. So what you're bringing up, Lynne, is that by going to the therapeutic process and actually seeing, oh my goodness, I gave meaning to this and I got stuck. It allows you to have an option to do something other than.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I like to tell my clients, you will never be someone who didn't have your history.
No.
We don't outgrow our history. We can't amputate our history. People keep saying, well, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50. Shouldn't I have outgrown this? You don't outgrow your history. It's hardwired, which is, I think, what Dee is saying.
Yes, hardwired, but you can go beyond it if there are many different ways to do that. You're not stuck with it like there's no possibility to go beyond it. You can, but you have to discover and uncover your own. And what you said, it's hard work.
Right.
And just knowing why, we rummage around the why. And so what,
You're right, exactly.
and you're dragging it around like a dead body from 20 to 30 to 40 to 70 to death.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Thank you, Lynne. That was
you're
great.
welcome. Yeah, I'm I'm on your page. I mean, it's when I tell my clients that you'll never be someone who didn't have your history, they're a little shocked. Well, I mean, I left it behind. It's the past. It's over, right? No. Right.
Or when people say, I have to move on.
Oh yeah, right.
I'm leaving that behind. And I ask them, where are you leaving it? Under a tree? Like, we think the brain has the capacity to deny, put aside many different mechanisms, but it's still there. It's in the background.
Not only that, but I believe what you were saying about how it all gets imprinted. And then the brain's job is just to identify a stimulus with response. So whatever you learned, however you learned it, it's hardwired in the brain. And when a situation in the present resembles a situation in the past, the brain says, "Oh, I know this one," and it responds the old behavior. And
exactly.
it's instant. It's instant, right? So you're acting before you can think. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're you and I,
Thank
we're on
you.
the same.
Well, you know, what you're both saying is so freeing and empowering in that self-blame method that you were talking about as well, Lynn, that hearing it from the both of you and then recognizing, okay, so this is who I am. Because I think, like you said, Lynn, we have a tendency to beat ourselves up and call ourselves names. And, you know, one of the first steps is to recognize that you are who you are. Your past is your past. It is all part of your history. There are choices, options, tools, you know, things that you can go forward with, but it is empowering to realize, you know, let me stop beating myself up about this.
Well, and beating yourself up, as I said earlier, just lowers self-esteem. And when as your self-esteem goes down, it gets harder and harder to do this stuff, right? So this self-criticism, you know, what I call civil war, we hope that it's going to motivate us. That's why we do it. But it's the opposite. It disables you.
Right. So the workbook that you have that goes with your book, tell me a little bit about that as far as what someone could expect to find there.
Well, the workbook has all of the exercises. There are a lot of exercises in the book. And also there's an audio book, which
Fantastic.
they work, you know, kind of together, right? So the workbook, it will start and it'll say part one is the same as chapters 1, 2, and 3, and they're all about family. And so it has all the exercises and it explains, but in a limited way, in a sort of capsule way.
Gotcha.
And then if you want more if you want more information about it, you know, you can go to the book or to the audiobook. And then at the end of each part, there are exercises, and then you capture your responses, right? And then you capture them all at the end. So you wind up at the end with a capsule of all the exercises that you've done and all the answers that you've made, right? In a sort of brief form. And sometimes it can be enough, you know, it can just be enough. And you can use the workbook with your own therapist, you know.
Fantastic. Well, I love this whole slow down and look at what is in front of you and blocking
or behind you.
Absolutely. But like you said, people are looking just at the goal, or, you know, the outcome, and just getting frustrated if they are just spinning their wheels. And that alone is such a huge descriptor of what I'm sure so many people feel in their lives, is spinning their wheels and not really sure why, and then blaming themselves.
Yeah, it's true. And not only that, but other people will blame you. Why don't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Why can't you make up your mind? Why are you still doing that? And and then the person who's doing that, they're also stuck in it. You know, they can't let go of the need to tell somebody else what to do, which is epidemic in our culture.
Yes.
You know.
Lynn, huge, absolutely huge. And even just me with my own authors, that really shed so much light in recognizing and maybe being able to try to take some pressure or self-pressure that people put upon themselves.
Well, let me give you a little tiny technique, okay? If somebody is actually, never mind. I used to specialize in writer's block.
Wow, look at that.
Right. But here, if you have a writer who's stuck, you might just ask that person, this feeling, this stuck thing, this when you can't do it, is it familiar? Did you ever feel that before? Do you know where else in your life you might have felt it? And sometimes that's just enough. This is when when I couldn't do my math homework, my father told me what was wrong with me. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's enough, just to let them know that this isn't about that they're a writer. This isn't about that they don't have the skill. This isn't about that they don't know how to do this. This is about something else that's getting in their way.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. It's a Post-it note and it's on my computer right now. Thank you so very much. Our next author, who obviously, managed to get it done without being blocked, Michael Kelley of The Lost Theory. And he writes that Sean McQueen is a staid, middle-aged NYU literature professor leading an uneventful life until he receives a cryptic letter from his intellectually and poetically gifted best friend, Dylan Byrne. Following years of extensive research, Dylan claims he has discovered the theory of everything, a revelation that promises to alter man's view of existence by reconciling science with spirituality. The two men arrange a meeting to discuss the paradigm-shifting theory, but after Dylan never shows, Sean discovers his friend has died under mysterious circumstances and the theory gone missing. This is quite a thrilling international quest by Michael Kelley. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely thrilled. And I reading your description, I know that my husband's going to be getting a copy for Christmas. So
Thank you. Thank him for me.
absolutely. Tell me a little bit about you and your life and writer's journey.
Well, I fell in love with, my father was very into Shakespeare and all the great literature and Dickens and we read a lot when I was a child. He was also a lawyer, and then I went with the tried and true legal path and became a lawyer after studying English and literature in college. And my mid 40s, I started getting into on Wall Street. I started getting involved in spirituality and studying quantum physics. Left my job by early 50s, and about 10 years later, I have my first novel. But it took me about 3 to 5 years to start writing it. And then it took me about 5 years to write over 5 years to write the first novel.
Wow. Wow.
This is not your first novel?
This is my first novel, yes. It's a trilogy. So this, and kind of the whole trilogy came to me. And so I know each of the 3 books. The second book is going to the publisher on December 1st.
Nice.
Fantastic. Okay, so you planned all 3 books and then wrote one, but you knew where the other 2 were going to go.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So about 10 years. It's a lot of work writing a novel.
Yeah, but the novel itself was 5 to 7 years. I didn't start writing in the first 3 years.
Okay.
Did you do research, or it's all in your head?
No, I was doing a lot of research into quantum physics. I was getting into yoga and meditation and studying a lot of the Eastern mysticism and Buddhism. So part of the origin story was I was reading Dan Brown on the way to Bali for a yoga thing. And I said, I can do that. And basically combining spirituality and quantum physics and some astrophysics. And so when I got to Bali, I started penciling out the trilogy, or where it would head and how it would be shaped, and started writing from there. But initially it was the third person, moved to the first person. I say I made almost every mistake possible.
Did you have help? Did you join a writer's group? Did you have editing? This is just all you?
Well, I was very fortunate in that Beth Hill, editor, and became my editor and coach. And basically, I had to learn everything to show, not tell, how to write a scene. Right. I learned over the 5 years, and it was, yeah. So it was, but I love it. So I enjoy it very much.
I love the trajectory that you had this story before you even had the tools, and it wasn't like you've been writing for years and years. It was that this story had to gain the tools to be able to, and a trilogy. Wow.
It's very ambitious. You know, you start out with a theory of everything, and the arc is supposed to be. Sean starts with he could use some help from Lynne in psychoanalysis. He starts off very small life, adolescent minded, shut off after his first wife's death, but he's moving towards self-realization over the trilogy through so moves quite from a very narrow circle to a very big expansive circle over the course of the 3 books.
So can we look forward to knowing the theory of everything?
Well, there is an actual theory behind it, yes, but the theory,
We're gonna all run out now.
it's a little pseudo-scientific because it's my theory, and I'm not a scientist.
I love that, Michael. I'm not a scientist. I just play one on TV.
Yes, exactly. I think I figured it all out.
I have a similar. I've written a second book, and there's a lot of neuroscience in it. And I had to do a lot of research because I am not a neuroscientist, right? And so I needed to have a lot of footnotes so that people can believe what I say. I'm assuming you had some of that in yours, Michael.
Yeah, yes, very much. And you have to consult you on the second book. The second book, they kind of go where they go, and it's but 9 years later. It takes us into brain-computer interfacing and kind of a scary AI prospect that in 2027. So it's very a lot of studying about brain-computer interfacing that I've been doing.
It sounds like by the time that book is going to be done, you will have a degree in neuroscience because of all the research.
Well, I'll kind of use my consultant. I'll use Lynne and let her get the degree.
Yeah, you can blame me then, right?
Right, exactly.
I thought this was the safe space that we don't blame anyone, including ourselves.
Thank you very much.
The good thing about fiction is you can make it up.
That was great, Stephanie.
Yes, that is the wonderful thing about fiction is you can make it up. You know, we have 2 nonfiction authors on the show today. They don't have that liberty of just getting to make it up. Luckily, they're well studied, but yes, you get to make it up, which is wonderful.
So your second book is ready to be published. That's amazing. Are you working on your third?
Yeah, I'm working on the third. The second book, it's still going to go through a big editorial process with the publisher, but it's out with beta readers now, and it's in fairly good shape. And at least one beta reader liked it as much as the first book, which is encouraging.
Fantastic. Well, and sometimes as it goes with movie trilogies, the third one is the bigger one, the best.
Right. No, it should be that. Yeah, they should kind of build on each other.
Yeah. The Academy Award winner is that third one.
Right.
Can somebody tell me about beta readers?
Beta readers, people who read your book. They could be friends, colleagues. It's good if they are target market people. So it's good if they are people, if you're writing a children's book, for example, it's great if you can have beta readers who are children. But people who are reading your book and giving you feedback, even before you go into let's say a deep edit, because if something is missing the mark so badly at that point, if someone in Michael's beta reader group, for example, just hated his protagonist and just could not have any sympathy towards them whatsoever, that might be something that he needs to know before we go deeper. Or if something just felt so fantastical, I mean, I know it's fiction, but beyond, like, oh, stop, that, those kinds of things. I had an author recently with a children's book that had some beta readers, and one of the children was so frightened by what happened, and the adult readers didn't see anything wrong with it. We were able to, with just a couple of tweaks, address what was so frightening to this 6-year-old and make it work with the story much better. So it was a 6-year-old beta reader who actually changed the course of a book, which was great. So that's what beta readers are. If you have friends or others who, and often readers will do this in a reader swap, shall we say. You read yours and I'll read mine, kind of thing, to help each other out.
And I have to say that, like Michael, I have a writers group that I meet with every week, and they did the same thing for me that somebody did for you, and the same kind of thing. This doesn't work, or right. Did you say that another way? Because I didn't quite get it. Like that kind of feedback, right?
Have a writers group that could be akin to having beta readers right there.
Right, got it. Thank
Absolutely,
you.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, let me ask you, since I mentioned the Academy Awards, so who are we envisioning is playing, Sean and Dylan and anybody else?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things about Sean is he's once the book's written, it kind of you lose control over how people react to it. And I have characterized it negatively. He-Man friends that find him far too sensitive, far too revering of women, and he doesn't seek to sleep with a woman on the first or second date, and that's just what kind of man is he? And then I had at least one I guess very strident feminist who thought he was like a Woody Allen type creep because he notices a woman's physical attributes as well as their other attributes. So everyone has different views. So somewhere between Liam Neeson, one person said, and Woody Allen is the person that's going to star.
I'd like to meet someone who is halfway between Liam Neeson. That is truly frightening. So there's a movie I definitely want to be seeing.
Good. Well, maybe we'll settle with Tom Hanks. He did all the Dan Brown.
Well, that's true. Tom Hanks manages to bridge that gap very well. Tell me a little bit about writing, just for our fiction writers out there. Are you, it sounds like you plotted your 3 books before you got started. So does that go for your as well? Or are you more of a, let's see where this goes once you're within a scene?
Well, the books do take on a life of their own, and so I would say I'm somewhere between the seat of the panner, they call it, and the plotter. So I have a broad plot, and then the scenes kind of take on their own life, and they seem to drop in like cobblestones along the way.
Right.
Well, I thought one thing that was interesting was some of the scenes the editor, the publisher disliked the most, I thought became the most, and I think they agree now, became some of the most powerful scenes. But they pointed out the flaws of them. I had to make sure they fit, but they were the more fanciful scenes, and it just had to make sure they fit and didn't hang out there too much, too outside the course of the book.
Right. Now, since you are letting it evolve as it will, did anything surprise you, or did we suddenly have someone, get killed or drop dead in the middle and you said, oops?
No, what surprised me, I think, is that I decided he has some 9-year horizon where interesting things happen to him every 9 years. And by necessity, because the first book is 2018, that takes me to 2027 and 2036. And so I find myself in the science fiction. You could argue the first book's a bit science fiction because there's a pseudo theory of everything. And then the second book, by necessity, when you're writing about 2027, particularly with how fast moving AI and everything is these days, the metaverse coming out, I've had to make changes because there was a lot of metaverse like things in the second book. And then Zuckerberg announces the true metaverse coming in through Facebook. So it surprised me to find myself in science fiction.
I love that. Some people say they're surprised by what a character may say or may do. You've got surprised by what genre you're in. So, hey.
Yes.
So this first book is out already and we can purchase it. And the next one
it came out in late September. And I'm trying to do one a year, but with publishing delays, I'm going to be a little late in 2022 for the second book.
All right. Well, it sounds exciting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Our third author today, who we got to meet a little bit, Dee Martin, is the author of Listening with the Heart, Awaken the Secret of Authentic Parenting. And she writes that our children are born bearing gifts, and they have clues that hold the key for us to discover who they are. The secret lies in how deeply we can listen for what they are here to teach us. I love to hear that, and about listening and truly listening, not just with our ears, but with the heart. So please welcome again, Dee Martin. Dee, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you give us a little background? I know we've gotten to meet you and hear from you, but.
Well, like Lynn and Michael, I never wanted to be an author at all. So this book appeared by accident, I say, because I was in the island of Bermuda where I spent 18 years. And I brought up my son, where I termed my bringing up my son as a conscious parent versus an unconscious parent when I was 18 and had my daughter. So people used to ask me, oh, how come your son can do this or that or whatever it was? And it started me thinking about the way that I parented him versus the way I had been parented. So the whole thing is partially autobiographical, and at the same time, I point out what I would say are unconscious parenting ways of parenting. And the book, it comes in 4 parts. The first part is the unconscious parent, and that is not to make anybody wrong, because the first unconscious parent was Dee Martin, and so I recount how I saw myself as unconscious, just carrying over what you said, Lynn, what I had known in my story, not having having my parents, my grandparents who were my parents disappear and I never saw them again, or what happened to me and what led me to be an unconscious parent. But then there's the conscious parent, how I became a conscious parent, my journey through psychotherapy, all different disciplines. And like you, Michael, I went through, all the spiritual disciplines and the integration, the holistic integration. And then I saw that what's necessary, or as a possibility for people, is to look at how they were parented, because we carry down the parenting. And so I spoke about how I was parented or how I wasn't parented, and looking at how I was being, to a certain point, how I knew my mother had been, and creating different ways and seeing. And I started doing work with the inner child way before a lot of people spoke about inner child. And so I have us do a whole portion on discovering who your inner child is, really supporting and empowering that voice within you. And then finally, there's the actual listening with the heart. But first you have to open your heart. And so the whole journey is opening our hearts, because the world that we have lived in or live in have, like you said, Lynn, we had to protect ourselves. And often that protection of self has us not be able to open our vulnerability, our heart, our love to give and to receive. So the basics of the listening with the heart is our children come with batteries included. We came we came to this earth however we came. It's only our society that then tells us how we should or shouldn't be. And that's that hard wiring. We're open to sharing, to being in life. And what I discovered with my son that I hadn't discovered with my daughter was that my son brought me the gift of love, of unconditional love, of what it was to be a mother, because I had done enough work within myself to receive the gift. And the first thing I said to my son when he was like 3 days old was, I know you know everything, but your dad and I are here to show you the ways of the world. And I was focused on him not losing that wisdom, that part of him that he could refer to under any circumstances to find the answers within himself. And that was a spiritual component that I talk about, but spirituality in the sense of listening and being with and discovering. So the book is not a how-to book. It's a discovery of who you be in life. That's what I have to say about it.
And you know, I love the permission. Even just something you said right at the beginning, that the first unconscious parent was me, Dee Martin. And
Oh yeah.
You know, your humility and admittance, I mean, what that does for so many of us parents to hear you, a professional, say that, you know, you just like lifted a huge weight off of a million parents in the world by saying that, and by saying, that's me. And with work, looking forward, looking backward, looking across, looking within, that if you want to change that experience, but what a huge, you know, boost you just gave parents everywhere with this.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's so unlike what Lynne said or Michael, they always called me as a child the kamikaze, because I just said, oh, okay, I guess I'll write a book. You know, it was like, and it took me years because I shelved it. And it was only in the last year. I mean, I had sought to have people help me with it, but it's in this last year that I said, it's time for you to complete this book. Because every time I would edit it, I'd think, no, but it needs this or it needs that, and it should be this. And so it's been the work of my life. You know, like I said, I don't call myself an author. I call myself a speaker. I can speak about things. And some people have the facility of the ability. I just write the way I speak. And one thing that I got from the people that have read the book, which I thought was really special, they said, you're really straight about it. You don't go around in circles. You just tell it like it is for you. And by the way, with you, Lynne, there's nothing wrong. I make sure that however we parented or were parented, everybody did the best they knew how. And sometimes the best they knew how was not good enough because it created traumas and difficulties. But we're all in this together. It's called life, you know. We're doing.
Love that. You did the best you knew how. That's
Absolutely.
Huge, huge. That's why I said, what a gift you are giving to parents who are beating themselves up right now saying, oh, if only I had read this book tried this beforehand. Now my child is 15. You did the best you knew how.
Yeah. And it's really the listening with the heart. There are many different how to deal with resistance, how to create a safe space for your children, different things in it. But the main thing is give your children a voice. That doesn't mean they do what they want. It means they can have their say. And I recommend family meetings. I recommend that, and that's what I gave my son, choices very early, and asking him questions even at 3. What do you think? What do you like? What's the most important thing in life? And he would answer. And sometimes, you know, when they say out of the mouths of babes, the wisdom that would come out was incredible. So I figure that if our children come, we don't know where they come from. We know all these, you know, the DNA and all, but we don't know the allness. So whether they're born with 2 fingers, 1 hand, a foot, or however we are, to deal with the what's so of what you're guardian of, and be able to love and be loved.
Yes. You know, one of my goals with our show is always to inspire other writers. They say 90% of the population wants to write a book. You 3 are, you know, champions. You did it.
Thank you. Yeah.
But not only are you inspiring our writers today, you are inspiring people, as people who are with the human experience, and what they can do, not just to better themselves in the future, but also to accept where they are on this journey. Right.
That's right. Right. Beautiful.
And I can't thank you enough for that. But I would love to hear from each of you just a little bit of a word of, if you have some thought, I don't want to say piece of advice, but you know, encapsulated. I've been gleaning and I've been trying to highlight, as you've said, various things. But anything you would like to add and share with us? Michael, why don't we start with you?
Well, it sounds relatively grandiose, but one of the challenges in the book is, and I think now we all have a little more, not we all, most people have the time to invest in self-reflection, be it meditation or whatever it is. And the challenge that's said initially in the book, and which I think everyone should consider, is if self-realization is real, it's either real or it's a massive delusion of some sort. But if you believe it's real, you perhaps should be investing in it. And that's part of why I'm so thrilled about this trilogy, is I'm having to grow along with it. And, you know, the second book, the character learns about attachment. And so each book has very interesting, and I'm growing through the criticisms of the first book as well. So it's really an enjoyable process. And for anyone who has the time, I recommend.
Oh, I love the fact that you're seeing this not just as, you know, goal-oriented, write the book, get it out, but it's a whole journey of self-discovery and growth through this whole process too.
Yes, yeah, I'm finding that, yes.
That is just absolutely amazing. Thank you. Lynn.
When I had a friend who told me that her sister was editing this book, and and she told me what the book was about, and I thought, well, everybody knows that. Why would you write a book about that? And I had an idea for a book, and I thought, everybody knows what I know, so why would I write that book? Well, the book she was writing that everybody knew was Women Who Love Too Much.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe everybody doesn't know what I know, right? And so I wrote the book.
Thank you.
Oh, that's an amazing insight. I love that. See you right there. How about you?
Please watch this trailer.